almost always the most talented ones, the top of the talent chart, have a hard time delegating.
Yeah.
That's a muscle that needs to be developed. And most unless you were you were in the military, you were forced exercise to kind of do that. It's a tough thing to learn, especially where
Yeah.
again, you have the aptitude, you have the capability, and there's a propensity to want to just drive that, run over into the end zone on your
Yeah.
own.
Today, we're excited and joined by Tim Dooling, CEO of Easton Select Group, a Massachusetts-based pool services and backyard leisure company built on a second-generation, 50-year legacy of quality and innovation. Tim brings deep expertise in operations, multi-business unit leadership, and ROI-focused strategy, guiding a diversified portfolio of brands that serve homeowners nationwide. With a strong background in P&L management, commercialization, and M&A, he is driving Easton Select Group's mission to pursue meaningful acquisitions in a highly fragmented industry and create scale that gives pool professionals a true competitive advantage. If you're ready to learn how disciplined operations, strategic growth, and smart acquisitions can transform a legacy business into a national platform, you won't want to miss this one. Please welcome Tim Dooling, CEO of Easton Select Group.
Hey, Kurt. Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Morning,
That's a
Tim.
pretty good intro.
Thank you. I thought you might like it. Worked really hard with some of my robot friends from Perplexity on some of that.
Excellent.
But I thought it came out pretty good and captured a lot of the things we want to talk about today. But the first thing I think I wanted to talk about is just, what are you most excited about in your industry right now? In the pre-interview, we talked a little bit about consolidation for a purpose, right? Like bringing close a fragmented industry, and what is the benefit, and to whom does that benefit? So maybe you could talk a little bit about that
Yeah,
to
I
start.
think yes, you bet. And again, thanks for having me on the show this morning. I think in general, and I've seen this in like industries as a view. I think there's an opportunity in this space. It is fragmented, but I think there's an opportunity, not only for the owner operators of these businesses, but for the customers to uh, to do a lot of like things that are going on in other industries. To have, for example, in the service space for pool, have an Amazon effect. Can we deliver a more automated, on-site friendly experience to the customer than we do today, where they don't have to leave the property? They can have the entire experience, not only the service, the construction, but even the purchase and retail event take place, at the home. So we're a lot of innovation discussions are going on. I'm very excited about that. I mean, I'm very excited. It's early days in this industry where we can be a leader
Mm-hmm.
in those discussions and be a part of that journey. So that gets me very excited. And I think the other thing gets me excited too, really more for the organization. It's early days for us right now. We're a little over a year old on our platform, but for the employees and things we can do to make sure they feel a part of this journey and make sure we have a high level of engagement. In many respects, we're at the beginning of that journey as well.
Customer number one, right? Customer number one is the employees. At least that's my philosophy. I don't know about you, but
Right.
I think your customers first internally is the group you're working with, because if you don't treat them right, they're not working together.
Right.
The customers on the outside are going to feel it, right?
Right. 100%.
Um, so I think, tell us a little bit about the platform. You said you're a year in on the platform, meaning the systems you're putting in place and the operations. Is that what's a
Oh,
year
yeah.
old? Okay. Tell
Yeah.
us
So
a
we
little bit
started
there's
really,
some
I think,
challenges there, I'm sure. Tell us a
oh,
little bit
yeah,
about that.
sure. The if I go back to the beginning, I was not in this industry. I was in the chemical industry, both in the distribution and the manufacturing side, for about 30 years. And a very good friend of mine, Dave Hobaker, and the Hobaker family had a long time, large, very successful pool services and construction business in Massachusetts. And Dave and I raised our families together in the same town. We knew each other as friends. Wives were our best of friends. We'd be up to dinner once, twice a week, and they're talking in their lane and we're talking in our lane. And most of our lane, our discussions were about the business, what's going on in his business, what's going on in my business. And I had a lot of exits in private equity, had a lot of operating experience in that space, and had a nice exit out of the chemical industry, and was thinking what's next for me. And Dave was at a point in his business with him and his brother that Dave was looking to stay in. His brother was looking to retire from it. They were looking to sell, and that just turned into a conversation. And we saw what was starting to to flare up in the marketplace as far as investors looking at this space as fragmented and potentially the next opportunity. And that turned into, hey, Tim, why don't you come and run this business, get it ready for sale, get it ready to be a platform. It was an investment opportunity for myself. At this stage of my career, or at the time, it was as much about the who than the what. To be able to do something with somebody who I trusted and respected, and build something. There's easier ways to make money. This is not easy, but it's exciting. It's really an opportunity to build something of value that's sustainable, that we can look back on, that maintain the legacy of that business, the original business, and hopefully offer that to these other partner companies we're talking to right now. So that's where we are today. That's the beginning of that story for Easton Select Group. Today we're 10 companies later. We've acquired 10 companies a little over a year, which is a pretty feverish pace. I don't think we anticipated that at the time, but yeah, you can imagine what that looks like. Both, if you think of the four horsemen of a scale up, you've got people, you've got the infrastructure, you've got marketing, and you have cash. You got to manage all four of those things. They never go away. Those are the issues. They change. The topics of those issues day to day change, but those issues don't change. And that's something that we're obviously mindful of every day we're running this business.
Many things come to mind. You're in business with a friend. I want to get there at some point. How does that dynamic work? Right, Dave is a friend. Sounds like.
Yeah, I think so. Why does it work? It probably, I think with age comes wisdom, hopefully, and experience. And I think we're both at a stage in our career where we sincerely want to build something. Dave didn't have to sell. I didn't have to do this. This became a true investment opportunity. I think that helps alleviate the friendship side of it. We generally agree on most topics. We can disagree and do many times, but it's about the business and about doing the right thing. But I don't know if 30-year-old Tim and 30-year-old Dave, if we'd be throwing haymakers at each other. But I don't think so.
Timing. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm 47. I don't think 25, 30-year-old Kurt and 25, 30-year-old Bo or Jim would even be having the conversation. These are my business partners. Would be having a conversation about, let's do this together. We can make something of this. But when you get to a certain point where you're like, you've seen things succeed, you've seen things fail, and then you see an opportunity and you go, I think that makes a lot of sense. And so I want to get into the opportunity now. You mentioned 10 companies. I want to get into the question of how do you identify those 10 companies? What sticks out? What stuck out to either one or two of them that you want to mention that said, that would be a great opportunity to build our platform?
Yeah, that goes back to really, if you add on to the beginning of that story, our investment partner, Brenton Point Capital, which was a newly formed group of investors, and we had a lot of options who to go with and join on that partnership, and they were just a nice mix of relationships we knew that Dave had in particular in the industry. There was a little bit of gray hair in the room, which I liked. Again, there was experience, and they were in it for Brenton Point is in it for the long run. They really want to invest and partner with companies and try to build something the right way, something that's sustainable. So that was a good fit, a good fit for us. But the thesis that we came up with Brenton Point is really frost belt, cold weather. We wanted to focus on, in particular, the service model, so the recurring revenue piece, service, maintenance, repair, and even remodel I'd throw in there. In the cold weather states, so frost belt, rust belt, whatever you want to call it, New England, Mid-Atlantic, into the Ohio Valley, even as far out to Chicago. That's where we want to put our stake in the ground. For us, you're getting the opening, you're getting the closing, you're getting the repair, maintenance in those areas. The old military, you want to pick a hill, military saying, you want to pick a hill to die on it. That's the region, the geography, and the space that we really want to focus on. So from a macro level, that's the thesis. As far as the who, one of the benefits we have with Dave Hobaker, who is also our executive chairman now, and other acquisition partners that we've brought in, other relationships. When 50-year-old companies, there's a lot of relationships out there. So we wanted to find companies that would fit that thesis and that own their space. And that can mean a lot of different things. Maybe it's geography, maybe it's a certain capability they have, but we wanted to make sure they were one and two in an area where they dominated, and also that we understood we had a relationship in many respects with a lot of these entities beforehand. We kind of knew what we were getting, and I think we have a good story to tell, and I think that's why we've had partners that in many respects, by the way, weren't looking to sell. They're all doing well. Many of them. This is not I'm retiring and I want to leave the business. They were doing pretty well beforehand, but they thought, hey, something, there's another path to this for me, a little bit different than what I'm doing, but it's a similar but different outcome. And they can help me scale, and they can help me join, get to an area or get to an outcome that I might not otherwise be able to get to, operating as I am right now.
So there's a trade-off there. You're taking away some, I would imagine, in the pitch, right? You're taking away some of the headaches that they are facing right now as a smaller private business owner with the money and the resources and the systems, right? And then from your perspective, you're gaining their relationships in the region. Let's say it's Chicago, and you have Kurt's pool company, and I have 30-year relationships with my clients, and they say, Kurt, we don't want to do business with anybody other than you, right? But wouldn't it be great if you could do this for us, right? So
Right.
Your pitch to them is, we're keeping you on, or your pitch to me is, Kurt, we're keeping you on. You're our key guy. You're going to help us grow. Tell me a little bit about the trade-off and sort of I'm offering
Yeah,
this, you're offering that.
it's a really good question, because if somebody was to ask me, hey, if I brought in a private equity or an investment partner, should I do that? What does that look like? That is one big, it depends, because every strategy is different with these firms. For us, this is not hey, we don't need you anymore, owner. Good luck to you. We value these people. We value them. We want to help grow them. So from my perspective as the CEO, what can I do for you? Well, here's what we're doing. Here's what we can offer. And it's almost like a big broom. I can remove these and I can add resources I can add HR. I can add marketing. I can add probably better benefits. I can add some critical mass and infrastructure you might not otherwise be able to get you where you are hoping to go if you otherwise weren't joining up with us. So
Yeah.
It's definitely a partnership. We want people to stay on. We love owner operators. This is not and this is not the same for all the models out there. This is not, hey, we got it. You're a cost synergy. See you later. We want them part of the journey with us.
I love that. Cost center versus investment. Let's talk a little bit about that. How do you invest? You mentioned the infrastructure and what's happening behind the scenes, right? That's how I would pitch. Anyone who wants to sell something to me, they say,
Yeah.
Kurt, you don't have to be in front of your computer as much. Kurt, you don't have to have those really difficult conversations about someone's health situation, whatever it is, you're talking about HR, so that you can focus on building a relationship with Tim, so that you can focus on building a relationship with, Jim. There was a question in there somewhere, but I've lost it.
Well,
But
I think ultimately, when you're having these conversations with these owner operators, it's important you're honest with them. You never want to go into a situation and tell them nothing's going to change. That's not the truth. And you talk through what those changes are going to look like at the pace. What's the appropriate pace for some of those changes?
Mhm.
What their role is going to look like? What life like day two looks like? For them, and it needs to be honest. You don't want to ever be in a situation where you've lost trust with these people because you told them something that didn't happen.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be perfect, but if you can establish that relationship and they look back and say, hey, this has been good, and most importantly, they did what they said they were going to do.
That's the beauty right there. You're not going in, from what I'm hearing, you're not going in and saying, here's how it's going to be done. You're saying, here's what we can give you if you need it. And here are the systems that can take away some of the pain that you're feeling now, when and if you need it, right? Not like day one, here's a new system. Day one, here's a new HR platform, ERP. It's gradually you get into the ERPs and the I guess the operational efficiencies that you're promising. but it takes a little bit of time. It takes
Oh
a
yeah.
relationship.
Takes a lot of time, and you have to be in it for the long run. I've been through many. I'll pick on the ERP. I've been through many of those over the years, over my experience. Big companies, small companies, and they never go great. There's always a even the best of outcomes. It's like teaching a kid who's never played baseball. You send him to baseball camp. He learns how to swing a bat.
Yeah.
He goes to the batting cages. He's never been in a game. Once he's in the game, he's going to learn how to hit the ball. It's kind of like an ERP integration. You have a good adoption rate. You train people. You've got the scope of work. You've done everything you're supposed to do, but now you go live, and you got to work out all the kinks and systems. So for that particular example, you got to have a discussion with these. There are different capabilities within each of these organizations, and you also have a seasonality in this business where you're going to crush the business if you try to do that in season. So some of these we've waited till off season. We were able to integrate. We were able to get on the platform level the ERP onboarded in about an 8-month period, which might be a record for this type of scale up. But we've delayed a couple because it's not a good time to do it. So you really have to use discretion. You have to have a lot of operational experience to understand that you don't want to destroy value in the process of building that infrastructure. It takes time and practice post integration.
This brings up the question I think I really wanted to ask today, which is when you're doing strategic planning or a succession plan, let's say someone's near retirement that owns one of these businesses. How often do you do that? When's a good time to do something like that? And do they always go the way that you've documented, or the way that you have a meeting, a strategic planning meeting, and say a 2-day offsite? You put things in place, you write things down. Here's who's going to handle what. Here's going to handle this role and responsibility. Get the right people in the right seats, and then a week later something happens, right? I guess I don't want to feed you my experiences, but tell me an experience where something like that happened that made you turn and say the timing has to be right, the season has to be right to put these things in place.
Yeah, first I'd say on strategic planning, you need to make sure you have a high level engagement, not only with your leadership, but you're communicating, all the way down the chain. And that the days of I'll use a Jack Welch analysis and in his book The Real Life MBA, where he talks about the days of the 100-page strategic plan are over.
Right.
The business is too dynamic, it moves too fast, changes too fast. If you can't tell me your plan on 5 slides, I don't want to see it. So
That's where I was going
we've
with
tried
that.
to
Yeah.
commit to that type of approach where it's a living document. Everybody understands it. We try to extrapolate 90-day objectives off of those plans that are tied into people, culture, and the numbers. 3 things. If they don't fit into those, I don't want to spend time on them. So if it's behaving that way, and the strategic plan is truly a living document that's engaged by everybody, you're not going to be right on everything on that plan. So you need to learn, if you're engaged with it, you need to learn to fail fast. And the strategic plan is the blueprint you're looking at to say, okay, this is working, this isn't. Let's pivot on it. So it works here. It has worked so far here. I think twofold, because we made a commitment to that plan. We've had a high level of engagement with our leadership on that plan. They know this thing is a living document.
Yeah.
And I also have a board, that there's enough operational experience on that board and experience to understand that, we might need to pivot on some of these things. And it's not a political environment. It's an honest dialogue of what the heck's going on with the business, which for those of you who have sat on boards, they can be pretty dysfunctional as well. And I'm fortunate that I have a group of investors and stakeholders that have it's not their first paper route, so to speak, in doing this.
First paper route. I like that.
Yeah.
A few questions. I think, one of my partners, actually, I asked him to create something for business owners for this exact reason. If they're looking to scale or grow, right, or they're looking to acquire a company, we ask certain questions. We give them a scorecard, and I'm sure it's the same way with M&A when you're acquiring a business. If you were to step away from the business for 30 days, right, go on a vacation, would it continue to operate as expected? You as the leader of the business. The answer to that question, I would assume for a lot of businesses is no. but the really well-run businesses, I don't know. You tell me. Do you ask questions like that when you're coming in?
Well, I think there's two parts to that answer. I think if your leader can walk away from the business and it can run itself forevermore, you probably had the wrong leader. Because leadership isn't automation, right? It's dynamic, it's changing, and there's as much EQ in that as there is IQ, and cultures are really important. And hopefully that leader is a thought leader a thought leader towards the culture of the company and where it's going and how it's changing. That said, um, the sooner you can get a business to more automated processes, that it's not institutional knowledge driving those outcomes, that's a challenge. We're dealing with that right now. So when you talk about infrastructure, you have the ERP integration, but now we got to map the process function, the job functions, and we're doing that, and that's changing. We couldn't have done that 6 months ago. We can do it now, to make sure that you can, as much as possible, you want the business to function and not rely on Susan, who has all this institutional knowledge, and we can't
Nailed it.
close the month out unless Susan gets her head in the books.
Yeah,
And
you
that's a
nailed
lot
it.
of that in these early days of some of these companies. There's a lot of
You nailed it.
institutional knowledge.
I totally agree. You answered that
Yeah,
question probably better than anyone I've ever asked it, which is you get the wrong leader if they can walk away and nothing changes because you want a leader that constantly grows and helps with everything, helps the
right.
culture, the operations. But the institutional knowledge side, you're right. The other CEOs call it tribal knowledge, you call it institutional knowledge, but that is the biggest challenge I am finding is
Yeah,
you don't want to have one person that knows every aspect of the business. And if they leave or they get sick, the whole thing folds. You have to create a culture of knowledge, right? A culture of
yeah,
best practices so that, Susan is teaching Kurt and Kurt's teaching Tim, Tim's teaching Bo, right?
right.
So that if one person it's just like sports, right? If one person on your team is hurt, you get someone else off the bench that can come in and pick up the slack.
Yeah, it's important, and it has to happen somewhat linear. You've got to, we'll go back to the enterprise system or a CRM. Pick one. You install it, and everybody's clapping their hands. Oh, it's great. We're off to the races now. It's like a board game. You went one step forward. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You now have to make sure you've got business processes that you've already established were the right ones, and they're getting tweaked. You've got job functions that have been truly aligned to those processes, and the chain of command understands what that process is all the way down through, and that's a lot of work. And you got to kind of have the car, then you got to put the operators in the car and teach them how to drive it, so to speak. And many times I think there's a misperception, if you've not done it, that once you own the car, you're good to go. No, you're not really. You got to put those processes in place, because if you don't, you're going to have one person in the team that has all this tribal knowledge about how that works, and people are relying to them, and now you get bottlenecks, and that person quits or isn't around, and now you get a lot of problems in the system. That happens a lot. It's a normal evolution. It's growing pains. It's not going to be avoidable. You put your best foot forward, but I guess the most important is to be aware of it, be mindful that this is going to happen, and make sure you're getting feedback on how things are going. Sometimes you can see a very concrete result that something happened, but not always. There needs to be a real awareness with the leadership throughout the organization as you're putting these processes in place.
I want to talk a little bit about decision making and communication because I think that's important when you're doing acquisitions as well. You come into a company and you decide we're going in a certain direction, or the CEO says we're going in this direction, and here's how we're going to grow it. Um, can you tell me an example of where some of the key people were like, well, do I have the authority to make that decision? Am I okay to, do I need to go to Tim now? Or can I still go to you? Or is it me that acting independently because I know the business? A pro and a con of that. Or do you have an example of where that wasn't communicated the right way and it slowed things down?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. It's like you work here, you know. It's funny. It's the themes are common in these scale ups. We have a leadership team, and I think we tried to be very almost over communicate with, in particular, with the acquisition partners that we're talking with, about what that looks like, what that org chart looks like, how it's behaving. But where you can get jammed on that, you're making an assumption they know what a COO does. They know what the HR director, what those roles are, because there's definitely assumptions being made on our part that probably we need to be more clear. This is who you're going to go to for this. You also have some owner operators who are extremely talented individuals, that you are elevating, and you need to make sure they understand, what those lanes are as well. It's not a capability issue. It's just to make sure, they understand what the scope of work is for that role and that function.
I even find sometimes it's good to have operational definitions. Like this is,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, what does CEO do? Well, we help the operation, right? Right. No, no, specifically, what are you physically going to do? What are you going to delegate? What are you going to,
Right.
what's your shop? Who and is this your shop, or is this the CEO shop, or is this the CFO shop? Right. So I think over communicating that, or just reiterating that during the process is very important. That's why you have meetings. People say, do we have to have a meeting about a meeting? Well, no, but we have to have a meeting about communication. I mean,
Yeah.
the reason for a meeting is to communicate and to say, oh, I didn't realize that was me. I didn't realize I was supposed to do that. I thought you were supposed to do that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's an understanding of the role, which I think we've gotten to a good place now, but I think there were some growing pains relative to that as well, understanding what that is. I also think when you get really talented people in these roles, your greatest strength is your greatest weakness, meaning, there's a propensity, including myself, to run. Everybody runs to the problem,
Yeah.
as opposed to delegating it
Yeah.
or saying, hey, Dave, can you handle this piece? You're better. That's really your space, not mine. We both don't need to be there to solve that problem. One of us can be there, and that's both an art and a science. Getting to that point, and that's just developing the team, right? To your
Agreed.
point. That happens with communication.
I think one of the keys, and I hate to make statements, it's better to make questions on these interviews, but one of the keys is if you have some key people that are so capable,
Right.
it can turn into a trap. They call it, MIT calls it the capability trap, where
Yeah.
um, wow, we're rocking right now, we're doing really well, and one of our key guys is just left, and we're fine. And then 6 months later,
Right.
oh, we're not as quite as good. And then a year later, they go, we no longer have that capability because that key person didn't delegate and
Right.
didn't teach the next generation the bench. So, um, day one, when I have these strategic offsites, I say, let's make sure we don't fall into that trap, and let's identify opportunities to make sure that we don't have that happen here.
I would say consistently over the years with, and I'll include myself in this, early days, along with, people who were on my team, part of my team, reporting into me, is almost always the most talented ones, the top of the talent chart, have a hard time delegating.
Yeah,
That's a muscle that needs to be developed, and most unless you were you were in the military, you were forced exercise to kind of do that. It's a tough thing to learn, especially where,
yeah.
again, you have the aptitude, you have the capability, and there's a propensity to want to just drive that, run over into the end zone on your
Yeah.
own and not
They
not
know they're going
delegate.
to nail it. They know they're going to nail it. You just have to
Yeah.
read. You have to almost have to have an outside person say, "This is not helping us in the long run. Thank you for doing
Right.
this, but this is not helping anyone in the long run. This is hurt. This is hurting in the long run. This is going to
Well,
hurt."
it's a short-term approach too, because you're getting it over the finish line. But is this how we want to look 10 more companies in? Because it's going to be
Yeah.
a problem.
Right.
You're only growing a very real problem if you're not getting these roles defined, and more importantly, delegating down.
I'll tell you, Tim, this has been a fascinating interview. I think in closing, I'd love to just hear, what are you most excited about around the corner? I kind of started with that, but then we got into these really nitty-gritty operational things. Um, what's 2026? What are you most excited about in 2026? And where does Easton Select where does Tim and Easton Select Group go from here?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for my team. I'm excited to make more strides in employee engagement. That's on my mind right now. We're trying to put our best foot forward, but it's incredibly important. We've established our core values, our purpose, our brand promises, but how is that going to behave in the organization? What opportunities do we have to engage our employees not only on those things, but investing in them, in their education. All of that is incredibly important. I'm excited about it, but it's also top priority for you to make sure we're doing that, because if you think about it, when you're acquiring, you know, that many companies in a short period of time, you get all these different cultures, and we need to define what we want to be, and how that's going to behave. And that really takes a high level of engagement. We're not where we need to be on that, but I'm excited about that challenge. It really, from where I sit, Kurt, and I know where Dave sits, I look back on this. I want people to be proud they work here, that they can have a career here, that they do feel part of something. Because when they feel that way, you've built a business that not only made money, that's sustainable. I've been part of businesses, they build it, you check off all the boxing, everything, the window dressing looks great, and it can fall apart because it wasn't a sustainable model.
Yeah.
And you didn't spend time on this. You didn't spend time on building the culture and building the organization. That's not easy to do. Anybody that tells you it is hasn't done it. It's a lot of work.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed with what you're saying. I'd love to see it in action. I think you're trying to build a 1,000-year company, right, out of a fragmented industry.
Correct.
And to your point, like, yeah, that's a great idea, great concept. But if people aren't engaged, if they're not interested, and they're not learning, right, and learning the skills, then they're going to walk, right. So the key is to understand what's going to get people engaged and to into get them involved, as opposed to having just one or two people do all the work. I think
Yeah, it is tricky. I would, anybody who's getting involved with this, or watching this, you've got a very real capability measurement going on here, and you've got a pace, and we have a very feverish pace. So that capability is almost a daily, weekly analysis. Do we have the right resources? Do we have the right people?
Yep.
Do we have the right processes? Because now we're 20 companies in, now we're 25 companies in, and making sure that's balanced. And by the way, let's not be 10 different companies. Let's not be 10 different cultures. And that's beyond the pragmatic approach. We got to get these integrated,
Yep.
and we want to be deal friendly during the acquisition process. So it's a good challenge. It's exciting. I'm really grateful for my team. You need a good level of humility when you sit in my role to realize you need better people around you that have skill sets that you don't have, to make this work. And I feel like I do here, so far. But as things go in this world, things are fluid, and we're constantly looking at that to make sure we're not getting behind the eight ball here without even knowing it.
It's a humbling world.
Yeah.
Tim, thank you so much for coming on the show. I want to be able to keep in touch with you, and let's do another one of these 6 to 8 months down the road and check on your progress. I think that would be
Yeah, that's great. Thanks again, Kurt. This was really, really nice extension and offer. We'll take you up on it down the road.
You bet.
All right. Take care.